Alright guys, how's it going? Although Adore TV is very much a gaming and technology channel, slightly more focused on technology right now, I've got other interests as well. Astronomy is one of them. Always been interested in astronomy. I think also that gamers are in general more interested in this sort of thing, because we play so many games with aliens in them, yeah? Obviously, when you title a video, Aliens Don't Exist, either you know something that nobody else knows, or you better have some really good facts at your disposal. Well, I can't prove a negative either, but there are a lot of facts out there, and I believe that most of them point to a universe where humans are alone. Now, I want to say straight away that this is not about God. I am not a religious person. This is purely about the facts that we have available to us today, and the logic that brings me to the conclusion that aliens simply do not exist. If you follow this subject loosely, closely, or even not at all, the chances are that you've still heard about some of the concepts behind it. For example, you've almost certainly heard of SETI and the SETI Institute, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. You may have heard of the Drake equation, which attempts to give us a number to the potential of alien life in our own galaxy. And some of you may even have heard of the Fermi paradox, named after the famous 20th century physicist Enrico Fermi. The best place to start with this is for sure with Fermi. The story goes that back in 1950, Enrico Fermi and a few more of his physicist mates were sitting around a coffee table talking about stuff that physicists talk about. But the conversation soon moved on to talk about alien existence in our own galaxy, the Milky Way. Around that time there had been a spate of recent UFO reports, but after a while the conversation again moved on to different topics. And then at one point out of the blue, Fermi suddenly exclaimed, "Where are they?" Or, "Where is everybody?" And as the story goes, Fermi had worked out in his head, based on the belief that if life was common throughout the galaxy, then Earth should have been visited by aliens many times and very long ago, and yet there is simply no evidence of this, and that is the paradoxical part. The best way to explain this paradox is to have a look at the universe, the Milky Way, and our own solar system. The universe that we know of is believed to be 13.8 billion years of age. And within the universe there are many hundreds of billions of galaxies, of which one is of course our own Milky Way, the age of which is thought to be around about 13.2 billion years. The Sun and the solar system is of course within the Milky Way and has an age of around about 4.6 billion years. This includes the Earth, which along with the other planets formed soon after the Sun did, and is around about 4.5 billion years old. Now, you don't need to be a physicist to realise that there is a big gap between the formation of the Milky Way and the formation of the Earth. And in fact, the Earth has only been around for about 1/3 of the existence of the Milky Way. And what's more, we know that there are stars in the Milky Way that are almost as old as the universe itself, and certainly much older than our own star, the Sun. And it stands to reason that there are many billions of stars that are older than the Earth, and that many of these must have planets going around them. And if, as many people, including some very eminent scientists, believe that life in the universe is common, then there must be very many older, far more advanced alien civilizations than our own. Let's look at it this way. The Milky Way began forming 13.2 billion years ago as discussed. Stars were born, stars exploded and created new stars, and this process continued over and over for billions of years. Now let's say one day, 9 billion years ago, which is double the age of the solar system, a nice Class G yellow star, very much like our own, was born, with an Earth-like planet revolving around it. Now this planet was very much like Earth and gave birth to life. On this hypothetical planet, single-cell life evolved into multicellular life, and as that got smarter, more intelligent, finally reached the stage that we are at now, and then, within a few thousand years, went way past our own capabilities and developed the capability of colonising the entire galaxy. Now, based on what we know from the Kepler Space Telescope, estimates range from between 8.8 billion and around about 50 billion potential Earth-like worlds in the Milky Way. So I'm going to use the low number of around about 9 billion Earth-like worlds. Now clearly not all of these are going to give birth to life. So let's take a small number. Let's call it 0.0001% of all these Earth-like planets that has advanced life far enough to the stage where it could possibly colonise the galaxy. That would mean that there should be, right now, around about 9,000 advanced alien species in our galaxy that are or were capable of colonising the entire Milky Way. And yet that clearly hasn't happened because Earth isn't colonised. Now you may think colonising the entire galaxy, that's a complete fantasy, but actually it's not as difficult as you may believe. Let's take a look at this. A few years ago, a couple of mathematicians called Thomas W. Hare and Andrew D. Hedman wrote an article called Spatial Dispersion of Interstellar Civilizations, a Probabilistic Site Percolation Model in 3 Dimensions. And while this sounds like really fun reading material, I'm not going to go too deep into it. What they basically did was work out that a sufficiently advanced species would be able to travel out from their home system and colonise the galaxy in a relatively quick time frame. Now the numbers varied quite a bit depending on how fast they could travel, but even at the lowball estimate, at 0.25% the speed of light, they concluded that a civilization could still span the entire Milky Way in less than 50 million years. And importantly, also concluded that the first civilization to emerge could have colonised the galaxy 100 times over and done it long before the second civilization even evolved. Now this one shows what is probably a more realistic scenario. You start off at the home planet, after 500 years send out 2 colony ships in either direction, 2000 years later, if each colony has done the same thing, then the empire has spread out even further. After 3,500 years, further still. After 5,000 years, the empire now spans thousands of systems. And after only 3.75 million years, the galaxy is completely colonised. After 7,500 steps. And although 3.75 million years seems like a long time, on galactic and on cosmological timescales, it is absolutely nothing. Down at the bottom you can see this. If you start at the oldest star in the galaxy, here is a formation of Earth, and all the way at this edge, the entire colonisation timeline of 3.75 million years, you can clearly see that colonising the galaxy would take nowhere near as long as how long the galaxy has already existed. Now, when attempting to justify the reasons for why the galaxy hasn't been colonised up till this point, excuses range from aliens don't care about colonising, or even stuff like they were wiped out before they got the chance. And while yes, I can fully accept that this is true, let's say in the majority of cases, all it ever took was one of these advanced alien species to have the desire. Just one out of many tens of thousands before Earth even existed. And this is where many of the so-called solutions to the Fermi paradox fail. It's called non-exclusivity. Basically speaking, if your argument requires that every single alien race acts in the same way, then it is failing a simple test of non-exclusivity, because all it ever takes is one to not behave in the way that you think. 99.99% of advanced alien species could have failed. It only ever took one to succeed. And that's just the colonisation part. The next part, which deals with SETI, is for me more damning evidence of the complete non-existence of aliens. Right, so SETI, what do they do? Simply put, they search for extraterrestrial intelligence. This is what they do. Since around the 1960s, in fact, they've been doing this through a variety of different programs that require a lot of telescope power. They actually have 2 areas, research and development and projects. So their R&D department researches new developments like signal processing algorithms and new search technology. Yeah, this is not like a bunch of amateurs running around looking at the sky through large telescopes. They've had grants from NASA as well, and from certain individuals who have pumped a lot of millions into them at certain points, including Paul Allen, co-founder of Microsoft, who has put multiple millions into the projects and now has the Allen Telescope Array named after him. It's a very interesting website actually. If you check it out, have a read through it, you'll see some of the early projects and how they work. It's sort of like what you'd expect. You can look at the stars in the sky in various ways. For example, Frank Drake, who was the first person to do it, and the man responsible for the Drake equation, in the spring of 1960 conducted the first microwave radio search for signals. So he aimed an 85-foot telescope in the direction of 2 nearby sun-like stars. Now, checking at the magic frequency, 1420 MHz, there's a reason for why they chose that. It's because it's a quiet part of the radio frequency spectrum called the water hole. And in actual fact, at the same time, another 2 astronomers, Cocconi and Morrison, were also attempting the same thing at the same frequency. A little bit later on in the 60s, the Soviet Union dominated SETI, and instead of searching 1 or 2 nearby stars, they were using omnidirectional antennas to observe large chunks of the sky. The hope being that at least a very few advanced civilizations capable of radiating enormous amounts of transmitting power would be heard. So there are various ways to do it. You can look closely at nearby stars, or you can do a broader search for further out stars. It had mostly been about listening up until 1974, when instead the Arecibo message was beamed out, a very powerful message beamed out from Earth to the globular star cluster M13. Now there's no chance we're going to get a response to this in our lifetimes because the cluster is roughly 21,000 light years away from us. However, the important part here is that even back in 1974, we were capable of sending a message out from Earth that would be detectable by a SETI experiment just about anywhere in the galaxy, assuming that they had a receiving antenna similar in size to the Arecibos. So we have the capability of letting the entire galaxy know that we're here, and in fact, we've already done it. But because of the vast time and distances involved in space, it's going to take many thousands of years before the message even gets to its destination, and it will take the same time if we ever get a response back. So this is used as sort of another excuse. We've only been broadcasting for a very short time. In actual fact, we've been broadcasting for over 100 years. Television broadcasts, radio broadcasts, and even radar has been spilling out of Earth and could theoretically be detected by an alien race that is advanced enough nearby. And this is effectively what Project Phoenix did. It began in 1995 using a 210-foot radio telescope, and again it was searching nearby stars, and rather than doing a broad search of the Milky Way, it was scanning nearby sun-like stars. These are chosen for a good reason. It's because we believe they're much more likely to have Earth-like planets and therefore life. Now by this time technology had evolved enough, and Project Phoenix was now looking for signals between 1200 and 3000 MHz, so not just at the 1420 MHz range. Project Phoenix was in fact capable of picking up the signal from Pioneer 10 at a distance of more than 10 billion kilometres and its 8-watt transmitter. You can see here the line of Pioneer 10's transmitter clearly showing. This was a very powerful program that would have been able to pick up any artificial nearby noise. In the end, Project Phoenix observed about 800 stars to a distance of about 240 light years, covering more than 1 billion frequency channels for each star. Phoenix would have been sensitive to transmitters with power similar to our military airport radars. So for 800 nearby stars, anything at all transmitting with the power of an airport radar would have been picked up by Phoenix. And yet no ET signals were detected. Nothing whatsoever. Now, one of the excuses often given for why we can't pick up any aliens is simply that we're not listening properly, or they are too alien, that they transmit in different ways. But once again, this fails the non-exclusivity test. And to be frank, it's a lot more to do with science fiction than actual science fact. No matter where you look in the Milky Way, physics stays the same, chemistry stays the same. There are universal physical laws. Nothing changes at one side of the galaxy all of a sudden. They follow the same laws as we do. Chemical elements stay the same no matter where you go. So when people start talking about beings made out of pure energy and stuff like that, that's just pure science fiction. Life evolves and becomes more complex, not less complex. How does a being of pure energy think without non-existent neurons firing in their non-existent brains? But let's say they're right anyway. Are all the other aliens not using radio or microwaves? Every argument that says we are not listening properly, they are too alien, and stuff like that, what these arguments do is make us the galactic weirdos, and we are simply following the physical and chemical rules. In this video I've talked about advanced aliens, and what you're looking at here is a chart proposed by the Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev back in 1964. It's called the Kardashev scale, and basically speaking, he proposed 3 types of civilizations. Type 1 civilizations would have complete mastery of their own planet. Type 2 civilizations would have mastery of their entire solar system, while Type 3 civilizations would have complete mastery of their galaxy. Effectively, this is all about energy. Energy is what drives technological progress. It is basically what drives humanity forward. Our economies are based on it. Everything we do requires energy, requires oil or gas, electricity. Without it, we simply could not function, we could not progress. Now, on this scale, humans are around about 0.7. Clearly, we are not yet complete masters of our planet. We are certainly masters of stuff like the food supply. All animals on the planet bend to our will. But we can't do other stuff that's been proposed. For example, we can't yet control the weather. And we don't yet control the full internal energy from, example, deep core mining, that sort of thing. However, it should be obvious that this is the direction that we will head in. And eventually, after mastering the planet, we will go on to master the solar system as well. bases on the moon, bases on Mars. But the important thing in the Type 2 civilization is, the second bullet point, can fully harness energy from within a star. Now, how would this be done? Well, one method that has been proposed is by creating what is known as a Dyson sphere around about the star. In this case, this one goes out past Mercury and Venus. You're looking at a 3 metre thick bubble completely enveloping the sun. Now, it goes without saying that this is far beyond our current technology, and in many ways seems pretty fantastical. But then again, what might visiting the moon have seemed like to the Greeks and Romans 2,000-3,000 years ago? We certainly shouldn't be writing this stuff off just because it seems impossible to us now. But what's really interesting about this is that plenty of scientists believe that this is what we should be looking for when hunting for alien civilizations. And funnily enough, very recently, a star going by the name of KIC 8462852 was discovered to be occasionally dimming by as much as 20%, with the suggestion that there is some material in orbit around this star that blocks its light. Now, this was also picked up by the Kepler Space Telescope, which is looking for planets. However, it was obvious that this material is not simply a planet. And of course, very quickly, many in the scientific community decided that there was a possibility of this being some kind of Dyson swarm or Dyson sphere blocking the light from the star. So SETI actually turned the Allen Telescope Array onto it, looking for both narrowband signals as well as somewhat broader transmissions that might be produced, for example, by powerful spacecraft. And as we know, aliens might not be signalling at radio frequencies, so the Allen Telescope Array also searched for brief but powerful laser pulses. SETI found no evidence whatsoever of any technology-related radio signals from the star, and no laser pulses. It is, however, still being monitored, so we'll keep an eye on that one. However, right now, it looks very much like a natural cause, for example, a bunch of comets orbiting closely to the star. Anything like a Dyson sphere would almost certainly be giving out waste heat, and a lot of it. The first law of thermodynamics is very simple. Energy can be changed, but it cannot be destroyed or created. So something like a Dyson sphere would be giving out a massive energy signature, probably in the infrared. And this is also something that we're searching for in our galaxy and beyond. And yet we've found nothing. And this, for me, is the final proof that we are alone. Several searches for these kinds of megastructures are now underway. As mentioned previously, Kepler is looking for any kind of orbiting megastructure. Looking for the waste heat from a Dyson sphere? Simply compare the infrared emissions with visible emissions to see if light from stars is being blocked. Check the spectrum to see what's blocking the light. We can do this 100,000 light years, which is the entirety of the Milky Way. But for me, the final one, looking for galaxies darkened by millions of Dyson spheres. Now, if we go back to near the beginning of this video, where I talked about how the solar system and the Earth had only been around for about 1/3 of the known lifetime of the universe, and that there should be far more advanced alien species out there, then surely if one was capable of building one Dyson sphere, they would be capable of building millions of Dyson spheres when they moved on to colonize their own galaxy. There is so much energy, and there is simply no way that energy can be hidden on this kind of scale. And one such search was completed last year, and not one single shred of evidence was found of Dyson spheres or other large-scale engineering projects which may be the result of advanced alien activity. Effectively, this is what some people are suggesting, that alien races exist, and yet they are able to completely hide their existence to us, leaving no evidence of energy, transmissions, or anything whatsoever. From the 100,000 nearest galaxies, that is an awful lot of stars, with an awful lot of potential Earth-like worlds, and an awful lot of potentially advanced alien species, and yet there is only one common outcome to all of these searches. Nothing. The Hubble Space Telescope has photographed hundreds of millions of galaxies, and not one of them has shown any signs of artificial activity. Hubble has photographed all shapes and sizes, but never found any where half of the galaxy has been dimmed, or even as much as 1/5 of the galaxy. What is the chances of that happening when all of these galaxies are meant to contain thousands of species? Are they really all out there? And yet they are all so alien that we cannot even comprehend their transmissions? Or are none of them, not one single alien species, interested in colonising the galaxy or having any imperial ambitions? Or is it something much simpler and something much scarier? They just don't exist. But how is that even possible? This is why so many people have such an issue with this, because with all of those galaxies and all of those stars, how is it possible that we can be the only life out there? Well, the obvious answer is we are the only technological life, which is a possibility, but not one that I consider realistic. Evolution is an arms race, but it's an arms race to get smart, because the smartest species wins. Humans won on Earth because we got smart, not because we were stronger or faster, but because we were smarter. And the smarter you are, the smarter your offspring become. So for me, there are two possibilities, which I touched upon in an earlier slide. If you remember, on our hypothetical planet X, which formed 9 billion years ago, the first single-celled life evolved 500 million years later. This is what we believe happened on Earth, going on stuff like fossil evidence. If you notice though, the first multi-celled life only occurred 3.5 billion years later, and there was in fact an intermediate step to this. The first single-celled life were called prokaryotes, and these single-celled organisms ruled the Earth for at least 2 to 2.5 billion years. That is the only life that was on Earth for all of that time. Then at one point in the fossil record, all of a sudden eukaryotes appear. And what we believe these first eukaryotes were is a symbiotic relationship between two prokaryotes. And this has only ever happened once in the history of Earth. And the eukaryotes went on to form plants, fungi and animals, whereas the prokaryotes remained as bacteria and extremophile bacteria known as archaea. But if something can only happen once in 2.5 billion years, then this must be an exceedingly rare event indeed. This is something that should maybe never have happened, or maybe it has only happened once in the entire history of the universe here on Earth. This is what is known as a great filter, an event that is so exceedingly unlikely to happen that it could be acting as a barrier to advanced technological civilizations. It is also possible that life period should never have happened. If you look at that prokaryote again, you can clearly see that there must have been stages before it. This organism did not just suddenly appear from nothing, and at some point life must arise from non-life, and this is called abiogenesis. At some point in the very early history of the Earth, organic compounds and proteins combined to create this very first life, and we have no evidence of this happening anywhere else. We've been to the moon, we brought back moon rocks. We know that there is water on the moon. Same with Mars. Yet we haven't found any evidence, even of single-celled life. Maybe this is the real great filter. And not only is there no advanced technological civilizations out there, every other world in the universe is a barren, completely lifeless place, without even bacteria roaming it. Or perhaps more likely, abiogenesis is exceedingly rare, and then the evolution from prokaryotic life to eukaryotic life is exceedingly rare on top. Two exceedingly rare occurrences, the odds of which of happening are less than all the planets going around all the stars in all the galaxies in the entire universe. Right, I'll be really interested in knowing what you think about this. I'm pretty sure a lot of you have got your own ideas. As usual, there's a bunch of links in the description below, and hopefully some interesting discussion as well. I'll catch you later, guys.